Legend of Total War here, and today we're doing another Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires campaign review, this time revisiting Tyrion. So this one will be a bit different from the other ones that we've done, in that it's going to be a more in-depth campaign review than what I originally did for Tyrion, which if we have a quick look at that one, that was only 2 minutes and 19 seconds long. I guarantee this one will be a lot longer. And yeah, that was done January 17, 2023. Now, his start position and his faction hasn't really changed at all. But like I said, I'm going to go into a lot more detail. And the other aspect of this is that I'd like to do a bit of like a speculation and maybe suggestions on what I would like to see from a potential Tyrion update. Because I do believe that the next DLC that's coming is going to be Slaanesh versus High Elves versus someone else. And I think the majority of the community are probably in agreement with that. And since in the other DLCs, being Thrones of Decay and Omens of Destruction, Creative Assembly has gone in and updated some of the base game lords, such as Karl Franz, Balthazar Gelt, with their unique mechanics, and also with Greaser Skulltooth and Scrag the Slaughterer, giving them some unique mechanics as well. There is a good opportunity, I think, for the High Elves, especially considering Balthazar Gelt's mechanic could basically just be copy-pasted over to Teclis, and it'd be fine. Although it would be good for Teclis' sake if he also had access to high magic there, as well as the other 8 winds of magic, and also maybe tweak some of the other bonuses a fair bit, as well as the equipment. It wouldn't make sense to have the exact carbon copy. Basically, I would like to see the High Elf version be a little bit more interesting, maybe a little bit more in depth. Maybe not necessarily as powerful, because it was like Balthazar Gelt's version is super bloody overpowered, but bit more options basically for the High Elves, because they are on average vastly better spellcasters than humans. So that's what I'd like to see for Teclis. So I'm not going to make a Teclis updated campaign review. I just feel like that's all I need to say about that one. But as for Tyrion, you definitely could take Karl Franz's and Greaser's Goldtooth mechanics, is basically identical, and apply it to him. That could work. However, that does come across as really kind of lazy if they just like copy paste it for a third time, which is definitely something that would be easy for them to implement. But I'd like them to go a little bit further and have Tyrion's campaign actually be a little bit more thematic in terms of another mechanic that they added into the game shortly after Warhammer 2 came out, and that was the Sword of Cain. So Sword of Cain came out, was introduced into the map when the Queen and the Crone DLC came out. And from a lore perspective, Tyrion is the one that should be interacting, or not, with the Sword of Cain, because he actually picked it up, in the end times, if you consider that canon or not. Some people don't. Anyway, and he kind of has some indication of that in his skill tree. So Tyrion has a mutually exclusive skill line where there is an obviously better option and an obviously worse option. But people often choose the worse option because of thematic reasons. This is not completely uncommon, which is why I think that if they are going to do a update for the High Elves and give the base game lords a bit of a unique flavor, the Sword of Cain really should be influencing Tyrion's campaign. So Bloodline of Anarion, choosing down this line here, locks off Majesty of Ulthuan. This one here gives you a fair bit of control penalties. Not that big of a deal for the High Elves, since they've got a lot of things that they can do to globally continuously increase the public order, so you can just mitigate this quite a lot. But it does only make him stronger on the battlefield, which is good, but in my opinion, he's already quite strong in the battlefield, and getting global bonuses from here provides a significantly better overall impact on your faction, and will impact on every single legendary lord, or every single lord that is under your command, and every single city. So if we go through this just briefly, Unifier over here, diplomatic relations plus 20 with High Elves, so that'll make it a lot easier to confederate them, so you can get the other legendary lords faster. The other legendary lords are all awesome. The High Elves have a very good array of legendary lords. The sooner you get them, the sooner you get their global bonuses, the sooner you get their armies, and they start pounding on the campaign map. Control plus 1 all provinces, income from more building plus 13% in the local province. I don't know why it's 13%, indicates a bit of Skaven there, but whatever. Sense of urgency, recruitment cost reduction minus 10% for all armies. Faction-wide, essentially. So making your armies cost cheaper to recruit, that's a huge bonus for the rest of the campaign. Global recruitment duration -1 to a minimum 1. That's also super impactful, especially considering the High Elves don't have a building that they can just keep building more of that will get their global recruitment capacity up, like some of the other factions. In fact, most factions in the game have a way of getting a maximum amount of global recruitment capacity, which the cap is 30, but the High Elves don't. So there's only a limited number of ways to increase their global recruit capacity, unless of course you're using the revert back to Tamarkan, a trait mod, because that gave you global recruitment. But in the base game without any mods, that's gone now, and his trait is now trash. But anyway, this is one of the few things that can give you extra global recruitment capacity. And in a High Elf campaign, this is super bloody good, because in many cases you will need to recruit an army in an emergency situation and utilize the global recruitment time, where it only takes one turn to recruit something, cheap to recruit, and you've got more capacity, allowing the player to basically recruit armies very quickly, thanks to Tyrion's ability here. Then you've got Righteous Cause, reducing upkeep cost by 10%. This is even more impactful in Warhammer 3 than it was in 2, because in 2, that bonus there kind of goes away really quickly because of 15% upkeep cost supply lines, on very hard and legendary difficulty, that is. But in Warhammer 3, even on very hard and legendary difficulty, it's only 4%, so that basically mitigates 2.5 supply lines. So that's pretty good. And then, of course, reducing corruption is also really good. So this, in my opinion, is objectively better, the way that you should go. But some people, they want to just go down the bloodline of Venerian. Anyway, and since there are so many people that do that, I really think he should have a campaign mechanic specifically with this, because all of the elves have this button, which basically allow them to pick up the Sword of Cain. But I feel like Tyrion should have something unique with it. Not just have the same penalties that everyone else has, but something unique for Tyrion that allows his campaign to progress in a bit more of a narrative way, I suppose. And maybe have this skill line here actually have some impact if you decide to pick up the Sword of Cain as Tyrion. That's what I think you should do. Because currently the implementation of the Sword of Cain isn't really my favorite, in that it's a very powerful weapon, but again, it causes huge global penalties. There's only a couple of factions where those global penalties just don't matter to. So, for example, the Beastmen, it just doesn't matter at all. And for the High Elves, increasing your upkeep costs, increasing the amount that people hate you by up to plus 100 or something, and minus 8 public order penalties. These are some pretty crippling penalties. The public order ones can at least be mitigated. But the other ones, especially the ones where they hate you minus 100, especially considering that the sort of core High Elf mechanic is Intrigue at Court, which is what eventually was given over to Karl Franz, except a lesser version of it. This is such an impactful campaign mechanic, because not only is it really incentivizing you to use some influence to make the other High Elves like you, so that you can confederate them very quickly, because like I've said, they're very valuable, but also to negotiate other alliances, but also to break up alliances that you don't want to have to deal with by making two factions completely hate each other, and then just picking on the loser of those two wars, or picking on the winner of those two wars, if they don't have any allies left. So this is a super impactful mechanic, so getting tons and tons of influence is really bloody good. So it would be good to see if there was something additional for Tyrion that wasn't just like Karl Franz's mechanic, because that's been done now twice. Because Grease's Goldtooth got a very similar version than what Karl Franz. Obviously they tweaked it a bit, but the core essence of it, basically click a button, spend a resource, and get some instant bonuses that were pretty damn powerful. I don't think that's something that Tyrion needs. Okay, so now let's talk about the actual campaign itself. I still think that this campaign here is what really should be the starter campaign, which the game does indicate that this should be one of your first campaigns if you're just starting off with Total War Warhammer 3. Obviously, you need to own Total War Warhammer 2 in order to have access to Tyrion as a playable faction. But yeah, this is the one I would always recommend to people to play first if you've never played Total War Warhammer 3, because the High Elves are such an easy faction to play. This is a really good one for you to learn how units work, and also just have armies that don't require much micromanagement. So on the opposite end of the scale, something like Slaanesh, which requires at least pretty decent micro capabilities, you've got to be able to move your units very quickly, just due to how squishy and how important the charges are with them. But with the High Elves, for the most case, you can basically just set up your army and then just hit start battle, and then just watch as your army either wins or loses, because they've got really robust units that have high morale, very long range, high damage archer units. So you can just sit there, as long as you don't have to fire at Willbug, which very heavily impacts this faction at the moment. This is a very powerful faction to just not require that much micro. Also, Tyrion start position, he doesn't really go up against any legendary lords super early. There is Noctilus fairly close by, but in most cases, Noctilus is going to go after the minor factions first, and you can use that to your advantage. While he's busy fighting against Tyrion, you can come in here and snatch this territory here. He usually doesn't declare war on you unless you really screw up over here and find yourself in a weakened position. Also, this enemy over here that you start off against is super easy to deal with. Whereas, playing as Karl Franz, obviously the secessionists are also quite easy, but the amount of threats that enter your area very early become much more significant than Tyrion, because the other enemies in the area are like Nakari up this way, and to be honest, the only way Nakari is going to be a threat to you is if he takes out Eltharion over here, and that does happen sometimes, but it usually takes him quite a while to do that. You've also got Grom the Paunch out this way, and once he catches wind of you, he will usually declare war, but I very rarely see him set sail over the sea, so I usually don't worry about him too much. That being said, his defeat trade is really good for the High Elves, because it provides extra relations with other High Elves. But yeah, aside from that, there are going to be other legendary lords to deal with. It's like sometimes Marathi makes her way over here, and that's something you'll need to deal with, but you have time to deal with it. And that's something that in Karl Franz's campaign, you don't really have time. You need to be like dealing with all of these threats and have them all sorted basically by turn 20. With Tyrion's campaign, nah, you got plenty of time to sort this out. Also, when it comes to dealing with these guys, there's a little bit of a trick to it where you can take them out way quicker than if you just use Tyrion's army. Obviously, you're geared towards going out and taking this army here, and then going towards and capturing the Tower of Lycian. But if you do that, it'll then take you 2 turns to get to Angerial. So instead, what I like to do is take out the army here, obviously, and then have Tyrion stand right here and locally recruit 2 units of archers. I then recruit a new lord from here, put that inside the city, and have that one globally recruit 3 units. So that's obviously going to take 2 turns to complete. Then on turn 2, I have Tyrion go and capture Angerial, and then again locally recruit 2 units for him there, and this one here will complete the global recruitments on that next turn. So on turn 3, you have this army capture the Tower of Lycian, and then Tyrion attack the Shrine of Asuryan. Now that being said, that makes that battle a little bit more difficult if you're coming at that a little bit later, but it is still very much doable because they've got defenses here right from the get-go, and minor settlement battles, in my opinion, are easier than field battles because of the AI just sitting there and allowing you to just basically obliterate them from a distance, because you massively outrange the Dark Elves anyway, and plus you've got a Phoenix which is able to take out the towers, and once the tower is destroyed, then they don't build another one. So it's you can be much quicker at taking out these guys here than if you do it the sort of the straightforward way. And that also puts you in a position to strike at Safri really early as well, especially if you're playing on the higher difficulties, because on the higher difficulties, the AI that aren't at war to begin with, which they are not, they sit there and just keep recruiting constantly, and they can kind of even out-recruit you as a major faction just because of all the cheats that they get. So the sooner that you attack them, the fewer troops that they're going to have, so you're going to have an advantage, as long as you don't get absolutely obliterated while fighting them here. Also, if you dilly-dally in attacking Safari, well then Alariel will just go and do it, and that'll just kind of make it more difficult to confederate her. Whereas if you manage to do it, she'll like you a lot more, and she won't be as powerful, and she'll focus more on Nakari early on, because Nakari is something that would be good for your allies to deal with early on. There's also these greenskins down over here. Eltharion usually takes them out fairly quickly. Helping him out as well is something that you can do if you don't want to deal with Safari, because that can be a little bit more challenging than dealing with the greenskins, because their army that they recruit can get fairly large fairly quickly. But yeah, overall, I think that Tyrion's campaign is probably like a 7 out of 10 because he doesn't have a unique campaign mechanic, but I just really love playing as the High Elf. So for me personally, it's like a 9 out of 10, but for him, I would give it a 7 out of 10 just because as a base game lord that's very popular, it's kind of a shame that they haven't already added a unique mechanic for him and for Tekla. So fingers crossed that if the DLC that's coming does actually include the High Elves, that they give these guys just a bit of an extra campaign flavor, because all of the other High Elves have something. The 2 FLC lords have got their own unique mechanics, so Elithanar and Imric. Elithanar has got his assassination mechanic, which is really bloody good. Plus it basically turns the entire faction into semi-Skaven. And Imric has his dragon hunting mechanic, which is also really good. Going around, meeting the dragons, getting various bonuses, and of course getting unique dragons just for Imric's faction. Really good mechanic. And then the DLC factions, that being Alariel and Eltharion. Alariel's DLC mechanic is not very good. It's kind of passive, so I do actually hope they update that one as well. But that one just sort of gives you bonuses or penalties based on how much of Ulth 1 is controlled by High Elves. It's not very interesting. But Eltharion's basically Batman mechanic of putting certain legendary lords in jail and potentially cheesing the economy to the most ridiculous degree possible in this game, which that's an entire video in and of itself, that is also a really good mechanic. So if they manage to update these guys, so Tyrion and Teclis, and to some extent Alariel, with interesting mechanics, then you've actually got a situation where all 6 legendary lords actually have unique DLC mechanics. And that's something I'd really like to see for the High Elves, because I do feel like the High Elves are a very popular faction. So giving them a bit of extra love would be really good, because this is a faction that has kept people playing the game and supporting it and helping Creative Assembly sell DLC. So hopefully they go and do that. But anyway, let me know in the comments below what you think of some of these ideas, whether you agree or disagree that Tyrion's unique campaign mechanic should have something to do with the Sword of Cain, just not the same thing as pick up the Sword of Cain and then have a penalty for the rest of the campaign, just like everyone else. It should be, in my opinion, different from how everyone else handles the Sword of Cain. Or whether you think he should just get Karl Franz's mechanic and just have a High Elf flavor to that, basically High Elf reskin to that particular mechanic, which is, by the way, a good mechanic. It's just that they're reusing the same thing a little bit too often, because Greece has also got it as well. As for their tech tree, I think their tech tree is really good. It's got some really powerful bonuses in here. It is just maybe a little bit bland, so them maybe splitting it off into 2 or 3 different pillars, I guess, like they've done with other factions, that would be really good to see. But one thing I don't want to see them do is basically take the greenskin approach of basically just reshuffling all of this stuff and say, hey, there's a new tech tree, and then just nerfing everything and making everything shit. So hopefully they don't get the greenskin treatment and get more along the lines of the Empire treatment, which was significantly better than what the greenskins got, in my opinion. Anyway, that's the end of this one here, guys. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this campaign, what you think of my ideas, whether you want to expand upon it. I'd love to hear your ideas, and hopefully Creative Assembly are listening, and maybe they've got their own ideas that are way better than what I've decided, what I've suggested here. And if that's the case, then just go with that. That's fine. But I don't know what they're doing, and I just hope that they're doing something. I don't want... See, I was sort of hedging my bets with this video. I thought to myself, I don't really need to redo a Tyrion campaign review, because if the DLC is coming, it might just make this video outdated. But the thing is, if I do it, that kind of feels like it would increase the chances of it being outdated, and I would prefer that. I hope that this video becomes outdated 6 months from now, because Tyrion has a vastly different start position, vastly different campaign mechanics. Because the great thing is that it gives me an opportunity to cover him again, I guess. Anyway, that's the end of this one here, guys. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Appreciate you, and we'll see you next time. Later, guys.